The recent NATO summit held in the Netherlands turned out to be one of the most dramatic and important meetings in NATO's history. And as expected, it was heavily dominated by none other than United States President Donald Trump. Many leaders even called it a historic and transformational summit. Some even said that this is the birth of a new NATO, one that looks very different from what the world has seen before. The biggest change was about money, lots of it by the way. NATO countries, specifically in Europe and Canada, agreed to massively increase their defense spending. Until now, NATO had a rule that each country should spend about 2% of its total GDP on defense. But thanks to President Trump's pressure, they have now agreed to push it up to 3.5% by the year 2035. Now, this is a huge jump, similar to how much countries were spending during the Cold War. But yes, spending won't just be on weapons. Now, countries also need to invest in things like roads, bridges, ports, and airfields, basically anything that can help any army move faster in the case of war. About 1.5% of GDP must be set aside just for this. Plus, money spent on cybersecurity and emergency preparedness also counts here. But yes, not everybody was happy with this particular decision. Countries like Spain officially rejected it, while Belgium, France, and Italy showed some concern. Now, for many of them, their economies are already struggling, and meeting this new target is going to be a major challenge for them. Trump, who has always complained that the United States pays too much for the NATO, seemed really happy this time. He had earlier warned that the US might not come to help NATO countries until and unless they spend more on defense. But with this new spending deal, he changed his tone, saying that I left thinking these people really love their countries. It's not a rip-off anymore. Well, he also made it very clear that NATO is still heavily dependent on the United States. In his words, without the US, it's not going to be the same. Interestingly, the countries that was in the center of attention this time was Ukraine. In earlier NATO meetings, helping Ukraine was always the top focus, specifically after Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, starting Europe's biggest war since World War II. But this time, the main focus was on getting Europe to spend more on defense, something that Trump really pushed for. Yes, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was over there. He met with leaders and even had a private chat with Trump. But the final statement for NATO did not talk about Ukraine's hopes of joining NATO. Instead, it simply said that members will continue to support Ukraine. In a small win for Ukraine, NATO clearly pointed out that Russia is the biggest threat to global security right now. And this helped NATO leaders explain to their own citizens why spending more on defense is necessary. You know what stood out the most at this particular summit was how obvious it became that the United States runs the show. Everything was shortened. The meeting, the final statement, all to keep Trump really happy and focused. In fact, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte sent Trump a text saying that Europe is going to pay in a big way. It will be your win. Trump even posted that particular message on social media, showing the world how much power he holds over NATO. Well, after the summit, Trump, who had arrived thinking that it was just a boring task, left feeling really proud, saying that the leaders of NATO were a nice group of people who repeatedly told him, "Thank God for the United States." So, in simple words, this NATO summit was less about unity or more about power, money, and none other than United States President Donald Trump, reminding everybody that without America, NATO is just not as the same.